Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, together with the author and essayist Chaim Noll, we will try to address some aspects related to the attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. Chaim Noll, as many of you already know, lives just a few miles away from the Gaza Strip and is then a direct witness to what is currently happening in the Middle East. First of all, thank you, Chaim, for accepting the invitation to this conversation.
Happy to see you again, and I hope we can talk about some, let's say, delicate questions today that are occupying my mind. Do you hear the fighter jets?
I heard some noise on the background. Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of fighter jets today moving, so it may be from time to time that kind of noise we have now. But you can understand what I say.
I hear you perfectly well. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. But I mean, currently Israel is also engaged on two fronts. That's one of the things that the media tend to
at least
yes,
two fronts. Yeah, at least two fronts. There are more in reality. There are also rockets from time to time from Iraq, and there is a lot of activity in Syria, also on the border. So the border is not secure. So the Israeli army has to be on alert in the north, the Lebanon border with the Hezbollah, Syrian border. Then there are threats from Iraq and even from Yemen. Via Red Sea, rockets are coming, and then, of course, the main place still is the south, Hamas in Gaza.
That's where we are trying to focus our attention today and trying to better understand the events that happened on October 7th, because there's still a lot of open questions regarding to what happened. And also, I mean, if we consider from a military point of view, the October 7 attack was an entirely meaningless operation. The goals that were pursued by Hamas were those of destruction and a vicious bloodbath. But there is no military strategic objective in this attack. Hamas assassins themselves knew full well that they could not go too far into Israeli territory, and in fact began withdrawing long before substantial Israeli troops arrived. So the evidence of the facts tell us that this attack had terror as its primary goal. What's the secondary purpose?
The secondary purpose of all these activities is to make life unbearable for the Israelis here by means of permanent disruptions, permanent attacks, permanent disturbing the normal life we have here. So they usually over the years, their strategy was to a kind of war of attrition, to send rockets every day with minor damage, but on the long run, they hoped it would weaken the Israeli resistance and the let's say the feeling of the Israeli people to here in the land feeling secure. So this shall be disrupted and destroyed. The feeling of security, the feeling of being home. So it's of course they hope that this will divert people from making aliyah, from immigrating to Israel, but it's not the case. By the way, we have astonishingly there is no drop in aliyot, in immigration to Israel during the wartime. It's a normal numbers. There are even people who come just now because the situation is difficult. So all in all, this strategy did not work. But it's not so much the question of their strategy, but the question of their motivation. Why are they doing it? And they claim, and this is written in their covenant, the covenant of the Hamas. You can read in the internet, and there is this war of attrition they wage against Israel since about exactly 18 years, since Israeli troops left Gaza. They built up a rocket force to send rockets, and in the first time smaller. With today there are really dangerous weapons in their arsenal. So they do that now for 18 years, and the question is, why are they doing it? And they claim they do it as a jihad, as a holy war, as a liberation war against the Israeli occupation. That is absurd in the case of Gaza, because there wasn't Israeli occupation during the last 18 years. Israeli troops had withdrawn in 2005. But I think the real reason for this war is that they get money for it. They are paid for it. And this is what we all forget. And this is the main point of the entire situation now in the Middle East. And I was astonished when Donald Trump gave an interview to Israeli daily Israel Hayom in the last week of March. You can see that as a video in the internet. And they asked him about the situation here. The first answer he gave was that he talked about the real weak point of the entire situation at the moment. And this is the connection between China and Iran. And he started with that. I was really astonished that he came so straight to the point. All people talk about everything, but not about this. In March 2021, China and Iran signed a treaty, a contract over the coming 25 years that where China is obliged to pay altogether $400 billion to the Islamistic aggressive regime in Iran for raw oil. And Trump said in the interview, that was his first answer, as long as I was president, I prevented them from signing this contract. They had prepared this long ago, of course. Biden came into presidency in beginning of 2021, if I'm right. So already in March, 8 weeks later, they signed this contract. That means it was long ago. Prepared before that moment. So in so far, I believe Trump when he says that China had the intention to sign that contract already in the years before, but the United States under Trump prevented them from doing so, threatening them with heavy sanctions. China is a superpower, I must say, coming and increasing threat also for the United States, not only for us. And but nevertheless, China is dependent on its exports, and the main export market of Chinese goods is the United States. That means that the United States have really leverage and means to influence Chinese politics. And I think this was the first grave mistake the Biden administration did, that it allowed China to sign this contract. And this was what Trump said in the interview. It was his first answer to the question, how has the situation changed in the Middle East? This was a moment of change, March 2021. Since this day, Iran is affluent. They have billions of dollars every year for raw oil. And they have a lot of raw oil, but they can use it their own way because they have no industry to do that. The Chinese do it for them. That's all regulated in this contract. China built the industry in Iran. Even Chinese troops, Chinese army troops are now in Iran. Some thousand people to secure these facilities where the raw oil is prepared for transport and so on. So since this contract is in powers, we have a completely changed situation here in the Middle East because Iran can afford to finance Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon, the so-called Houthi rebels in Yemen, the Hamas in Gaza, and other groups also in Iraq. They can finance all these groups, terror groups, militias that are not only threatening Israel, but also the Arab countries where they are active. For instance, Saudi Arabia is a case like that. Saudi Arabia is really threatened by the Houthi and has already been bombed from there. So this is the situation now here in the Middle East. And what Trump said, I fear it's true, that it was a first grave mistake of the Biden administration to allow China and Iran to sign this contract.
Yes, you're saying just because the influx of cash now goes to Iran, but that goes back again to the previous question. If this attack on October 7 is part of a strategy directed by Iran, why then only this incursion in Israeli territory with purpose of just slaughtering and raping and bringing us back 1,000 years in history, instead of a coordinated attack from the north and the south?
That was planned. I think originally the plan was a worldwide attack, as you can see on American campus and other places where in the same moment when they made this incursion here into Israeli territory, the activities started worldwide, anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic activities. So the Hezbollah decided not to get really into war with Israel until now. So we don't know what will happen in coming times. It depends on their possibilities to. So they remember the last war they waged in 2006 and how their country was destroyed after that. So it's a small territory. Israeli Air Force can destroy most of the infrastructure quickly. So that's why they hesitate to go into war with Israel now. And this was one miscalculation of the Hamas. They were quite sure. And I think this was what they had. This was their also with the Iranian leadership, what they prepared, that there was planned war from many frontiers, and Iran tried it, as you know, in the night between April 13th to 14th. They sent more than 300 rockets and so on in a very short time to Israel to show that they could start with all-out war, so to speak, on several frontiers. But Israel was prepared for that and could destroy most of the rockets, so there was no real damage. They try out how far they can go and what they can do. So that is the situation now, that we live here in a kind of let's say lab for the other side tries out what they can do, how far they can do, how will the Americans react, who will help, what is the situation of Israel in reality, how is Israeli weaponry working. And in this moment, I must say it's a real weak point, this current American administration, especially the president. And this is what I want to talk about today, that we had to learn all when we saw this video recently of his debate in CNN with former President Trump, that this man obviously is not capable anymore to handle the situation here and to be really helpful for Israel. And this, I think, was also the case in the morning of 7th October. That was just midnight in the United States. And I think we should talk about that's mostly speculation, but we should talk about today about it, what we, after Biden's terrible performance in the CNN debate, what we can draw, which conclusions we can draw about the possibilities, what happened in the night of October 7th, with a president that obviously is not capable anymore to react appropriately.
Well, but if of course we have a lot of topics here, but if you study the recent history of, you probably you don't even need to study the history of the United States. I mean, a complex nation, a nation of the size of the US, of course, cannot be managed by just one man. It was not the case in the First World War. It was not the case in the Second World War, etc., etc. In America, mostly, if we want to go closer to reality, we should talk about feuds and wars between the different departments. And particularly regarding the world, you have the State Department on one side and the Pentagon on the other side, plus all the secret services, CIA and SA. As you know, right now in Egypt is the director of the CIA negotiating. There are at the moment situations that are really beyond comprehension, but all of this is not thematized. There is no real discussion. The population is unaware of how these things function. They are unaware of how an administration functions. Now, who is behind the certain decisions? What is the Middle East department by the state, by state, and who leads this? And it's really the first point here should be a discussion about the structure of power in the United States and the American administrations, and then we could go ahead on that.
Yeah, however this structure is, so I don't know about it. I must tell you, I'm not a specialist in this field, American government structures, but it didn't work. So it was a very there had to be made quick decisions in that night. So the information came to the Prime Minister's office, to the Prime Minister of Israel, about 7 o'clock. That was exactly midnight in the United States, in Washington, D.C. So I guess that the president was just brought to bed and had fallen asleep, and they had to wake him up again. So it took at least 1 hour until there could be a round of experts and responsible people gather with the president in one room in the White House to discuss the situation. In the meantime, there were new information from the Israeli side, but it took them altogether until 11 o'clock here in Israel. That means 3 hours later, 4 hours later. So until the early morning hours in Washington, that Netanyahu could give the army here a green light to act. And in this time, in these 4 hours, hundreds of Israeli people were killed. And this could have been prevented by quick decision. It took them too long, I must say. It took the White House too long to say yes. Obviously, the Israeli leadership was dependent on the confirmation of the American administration. That is the first point. Yeah, that's the first point we think about here. What happened? In the meantime, there have been published the so-called diary of the Prime Minister's office of October 7th. Maybe Netanyahu did it to let the people know how his situation was, that he couldn't act independently, or that he didn't act independently. Maybe he could. I don't know how much Israel is dependent on confirmation from the United States in such a question of life or death for many people here. That is the question we are thinking about and talking about here in Israel a lot. Why did it 5 hours between the Hamas started with this incursion into Israeli territory until the Israeli army reacted, coordinated, and with orders from the headquarters? Netanyahu telephoned the first hours of October 7th. He was on the telephone, mostly with the White House, but also with European leaders. That is also something we don't really understand, but it is all it's all in these diaries secured now, so that that's a computer that makes notice about everything that happens in the Prime Minister's office. We don't know what Netanyahu was talking on the telephone, but how long and with whom in which time. He came to his office between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and then he was only on the phone until 11 or short before 11, because 11:20 he gave a press conference in front of the so-called Kiryat, that's a quarter in Tel Aviv where the military headquarters of the Israeli army is situated. And it took him 20 minutes by helicopter from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. So I guess about 11 o'clock he knew what he had to tell the military leadership in the Kiryat. So we know that, so that he, until 11 o'clock, he was in his office in Jerusalem. And it took this long time, 4 hours, the American administration to say yes to a military operation, to a wide-scale military operation. We all knew that with Hezbollah luring in the north and other militias around prepared and so on, that this could be a bigger war after Israel had, also in coordination with the American government, stopped the wars in 2009, 2012, and 2014. In every case, short before the Hamas was destroyed as a military force. And this time, it was clear that this war had to be waged until the end. So until the destruction of the Hamas, it would be a bigger, a longer, and more bloody war. But nevertheless, it was the only reasonable decision to react to that incursion of the Hamas into Israeli territory. And we ask ourselves, why did it take 4 hours? And what an administration is that? Needing 4 hours after they got information, and I think they got their own information by their own intelligence in the meantime, and so they knew very early what happened here. And in these 4 hours, many people were killed, tortured, raped, cruelties were possible, all these terrible things the Hamas spread around at the time in videos already. So everybody knew what happened here. And nevertheless, it took 4 hours for the American government to coordinate with our government until Netanyahu could tell the army to act and give them green light for a real war.
I'm really a little fuzzy about this because I don't understand why would the Israeli army, an independent state, need the authorization of the US to protect themselves, especially not from a large-scale attack that would involve also American troops or American bases that are not present in the area. I'm a little confused on that. Where does this information comes from? Are the official sources saying that Netanyahu was withholding the intervention of the troops just because of that?
No, there is no evidence. That's, of course, that's speculation. I must tell you straight on. So, but it's the most probable scenario in my eyes. So after we know these diaries from the Prime Minister's office, we know that Netanyahu spent the entire morning on the telephone until he could go to the army leadership about 11 o'clock. And then only the army reacted. We had, of course, military reactions here in the south by the troops that were directly attacked. And there were even some helicopters sent, I don't know why, from the north. There was just some days ago an article in Yediot Ahronot where the helicopter commanders tried to explain the situations. They were completely unprepared. I don't know why. There were only 2 helicopters available at a base in the north. I don't understand why, because we have here next door a big heliport with, I think, dozens of helicopters that could have started but did not. So they didn't start. The helicopters could have changed the situation completely. They didn't start. They tried to explain that to us now with scattered articles in the media, why the helicopters didn't go. I think generally we can say that the army leadership did not give green light, and there were sporadic and spontaneous, often very brave actions by troops here in the south, also people coming at their own account from Tel Aviv. There was several cases of generals already in pension who took their weapon and took on their uniform to show their rank to the troops with a private car, went from Tel Aviv to the south. There were much earlier in the south. These are not big distances here in the country. From Beersheba, where a lot of troops are amassed, to the Gaza border, it takes 40 minutes, so maximum. So they could have been there. No, the army had no green light to act. Those who wanted to act on their own account did. And it was accepted, of course, but there was no coordinated operations and no coordinated orders from the army leadership until 11:30 or something. And this is a time Netanyahu spent in discussion and consultations with the American, mostly with the American administration. And now, after I've seen Biden in television, I got the impression that he was obviously not capable to act appropriately in this situation. After I saw him, it's a high degree of senility, obviously, and I'm 70 myself, and I know that my quick wit and these things are everything that is. When you need speed, that goes down, so you become really slower, and Sleepy Joe is still a flattery, I would say. I think that he is really very, very slow, and we had to feel this. And I only want to say that it is a great risk the American people take to have such a man in the office. And this was demonstrated to all of us on October 7th, that a bad and weak and incapable president can really do a lot of harm. You're right, he is not in a democracy the only person making the decisions, and there are people in the background and so on. But nevertheless, it's the president who has to say yes, and the president who has to sign the papers. So a lot depends on him. It's not like that. You are right that he is a kind of dictatorship and ruler who can do everything. But in such a crucial moment, it depends much on the state of mind of the president, I think. And we saw that in October 7th, the president obviously was not capable to react appropriately to save lives and so on. That a lot of people had to die because of that sleepiness, loneliness of the American administration.
Well, we grew up during the Cold War, and it was well known to us that the president, in case of, for example, nuclear attack, he has to make a decision in less than 15 minutes to destroy or not the entire wall. So you should be quite ready to react if you are the president. Of course, the mental fitness is a big issue, but to me the greatest scandal is that people woke up after the presidential debate, which was not really a presidential debate, but we don't want to go there because you see, that's something that, again, the media is not reporting anything. The citizen today is not entitled to be informed, even if the citizen sees that, because I mean, CNN, until now, until this so-called debate, before organizing a debate, you had to have a commission for the debates, which is independent commission. CNN is not a commission, is not an independent, is a corporation that decides the way they want. And that's really, the debate has also been made in certain ways without an audience, etc. But again, the scandal is that people woke up after this so-called debate saying, "Oh, the president is not really compos mentis." But where have people lived before this debate? Because I mean, I
Yeah,
do
that's why.
remember.
Yeah, that's why I started with that example of the Iranian-Chinese treaty. This was at the beginning of his term, and it was a grave and, I must say, a really catastrophic mistake that has exacerbated the situation here in the Middle East. Visibly and in a degree that it is a real warlike situation here now, and I think maybe this could have been prevented if this treaty would not have been signed by the Chinese government. If this is true, what Trump says, I mean, I don't know whether it's true, but the short time that they only 8 weeks after, 6 weeks after Biden came to power, they were ready to sign this contract. This was elaborated months and years ago. So, and obviously the American administration under Trump uh, thwarted their intentions, and prevented and made it impossible to sign this contract by. So that's why I mentioned it, because it was the beginning of the here in the Middle East, the violence, the result of the Biden administration is catastrophic. It's not the only mistake that they did not that they allowed, that they did not prevent the Chinese-Iranian treaty. There are many other mistakes. They took Houthi from the terror list, from the terror sanction list, and allowed money to go to them, and a lot of other things. So we could only speak about the mistakes the Biden administration has made in the Middle East here in these last 2 years. I think it was for Israel and also for the Arab states that are, let's say, we call them moderate. They are not really moderate, but they are, for political reasons, rather inclined to go with the West at the moment against Iran Chinese axis. But this is a situation that has amounted here, that has built up during the Biden administration, a new Cold War-like confrontation between East and West, between China and the United States. And this is, for us, it's the first, we are the first to get the impact here, to have to take in the impact that is with the money flowing from China to Iran, the situation here has completely changed. And all this under the eyes of the Biden administration 4 years ago. So I really, as a Middle Easterner, as an Israeli living here, I can only hope that this unfit president will not have another 4 years to make another round of wrong and catastrophic decisions. I don't know what we will do here then in the next 4 years. For us, it would be very, very bad.
The situation is bad for the entire West because of several political missteps that have been made. I would add also the European Union in this circle, because I don't think that Israel is receiving. I mean, yes, officially they are supporting Israel, but unofficially, I do remember a quote by, it's strange that I'm forced now to quote someone like Karl Lagerbach, but or Lagerfeld, I think the Lagerfeld, the stylist, when the lady Merkel allowed in 2015 1.5 million Syrians in the country, he said something, and as I said, it's very sad that we are forced to mention someone who is a stylist and not renowned intellectual in Europe.
But he was an intelligent guy, obviously. Yeah.
Yes, but you expect that the intellectuals would have a honesty and political role that they do not have anymore, because the culture industry has destroyed every critical person that could speak on a wider level. But anyway, I just wanted to mention this sentence. He said, "You cannot be a country that killed 6 million Jews and then allow 1.5 anti-Semites in it." And this is something that it's even a forbidden topic today. And this is the behavior, if this is the behavior of Germany, and the European Union, led by another German with a certain past. Of course, Europe is also part of the problem. Let's not forget that who showed the people in Gaza how to paraglide to Israel? It was a German. So
Yeah.
the situation is bad because it's completely out of control, and because it's completely irrational, and because we have no discussions about this. There is a lack of ideas that flow in the common debate because of the media, because of the politics, and because also of a certain Cold War mentality that still exists and is creating the two blocks that are way stronger than during the USSR times, way stronger. And this is, of course, Israel is the first country in danger. Why? That's why people always say Israel. I mean, the Jew is always the canary in the mine, because I mean it's the first one who gets the
Right. Yeah.
yes, and then
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, we shouldn't talk today about the European
yes,
Union. That's much more depressing. Let us talk about the United States, because there are elections ahead, and I hope that I can maybe tell some people who see this how crucial these elections will be for the situation here in the Middle East and for us, and that the question whether the American president is mentally fit or not is of really importance. And we had to see it here in October 7th. I mean, it was not the only problem we have with October 7th. There was a lot of failures from the Israeli side, of course. This is what is discussed here. But this point we talk about today, why it took so many hours between the United States, and let's say altogether the West reacted to that incursion into Israeli territory. It was the West altogether. Netanyahu also had to talk to Macron and other European leaders. I don't know why. I don't know why he had to talk in these morning hours while people were killed in the country. He said on the telephone and got calls from the European Union and from the United States, was in contact with the American government. Of course, Israel is connected with the West. We see it here in this point, that Israel is not a country on its own. We are integrated into the Western defense system, and we are the first frontier here. And of course, this had to be discussed. But why took it so long? That's the question. And I think this depends on the state of mind of the president, and what we have seen in recently in this CNN debate. It gave my feelings I had before, that I thought it was too much time. You're right. In a kind of a nuclear strike, the president of the United States has maybe 20 minutes or so to decide, but Biden will not be capable to do that. I'm quite sure. So in case the American territory can also be threatened by by intercontinental rockets and so on. It's not out of the world to think about that. And the United States can also come into the situation that they have to react. Europe, no question, so they know it. In the meantime, the European governments know that they are really threatened by the Putin, and also emboldened from the Chinese leadership that stays elegantly in the background, but finances all these powers that become more and more dangerous for the West. That's a general movement. It is not only here in the Middle East, it's also threatening Europe. And that's why they are relatively positive towards Israel at the moment, because they need Israeli rocket systems. The German government is really dependent on buying this Arrow 3 system in case of a Russian attack. So we are talking about the question, is the American president at the moment the right person in such a dangerous situation when the West is really threatened by a more and more aggressively acting Chinese leadership still in the background, but you can see that the Chinese strategy has changed. It's not anymore only in the Asia, in the space of Asia. So they really think about how to go further. They finance anti-Western militias in the Middle East. They finance the anti-Western Russian president. So you see that there is building up something, that there is looming something for the future, very dangerous, a new confrontation, and with an unfit American president that could be really disastrous.
Well, it is, I would say it is already, it's been already disastrous, and it is still disastrous, and nobody wants to assess. I mean, there's been some discussion in the US after the so-called debate, but he keeps saying, I'm going to be on the ticket. I will, although, I mean, the numbers are against him. But don't you think, I mean, you know, of course, this is a very specific case of one of the worst administration that the US ever had. And the US had a few bad administrations. But don't you think that this fits as well into the wider context of a general crisis of the West, being the US or Europe or Australia, a wider decay of political virtue, of political understanding, of cultural relationship with reality? I mean, you mentioned before, and that would be a very interesting point to deepen. You said after the attack, then there's been what happened in the campuses in the US, but also in Europe and on the streets. This relation is quite worrisome, because it shows that people are claiming that it's a human right to genocide your neighbor, to kill your to attack your neighbor and rape them and do whatever you want. And that's a clear cognitive decline and ethical decline of an entire culture that is incapable to recognize basics of humanity, and it's capable to go on the street and protest in the name of a humanity that they do not have. The president just represents, you know, the president represents the people, represents a state of society.
Of course, it is a symptom of decline and of great confusion in the Western society in general. And I know that those people who observe us thoroughly in Beijing, for instance, or other places, Tehran, Moscow, see this quite clearly. And I mean, this president is, let's say, the symbol of that decline.
Yes.
That's terrible to say. I mean, he was a good senator. He has a long story in government service. Maybe he was a good senator many years, but as a president, he was completely out of discussion from the beginning on, from a Near East point of view. I don't know what he did in the United States, but here from the point of view of the Middle East, the politics of this president was really the worst we had in many decades, and he did almost everything wrong that was possible to make wrong, and this was the problem that it of course it encouraged the other side to go further and to become more aggressive. That's another point Trump stresses on, and I can't really oppose his opinion at this point. So I don't want to make propaganda for Trump here. It's not my ideal candidate. I must tell you, he's also a wild card and somewhat incalculable, but he is right in his Middle East politics as far as I know, and as far as we have seen here in the last in his term. And he says exactly that. This weak president has encouraged the Chinese not only to sign this contract with the financing the terror in the Middle East, so to speak, by buying Iranian oil for $20 billion a year. I mean, that's a big sum of money, and they can finance everything here, and they can make life hell for also for the other countries here around, even more than Israel, because we at least have a strong army, but there are enough countries here around that are completely dependent on American help in such a case and cannot defend themselves alone. And all this with a president like that. So Trump said straightforward, if I would have been president, Hamas would not have dared to encourage, to make this to intrude into Israeli territory. I don't know whether it's right, but he is right insofar as this weak and confused and befuddled president was really encouraging for the other side, for the Chinese and Iran and their militias to act more and more aggressively. And that's why I hope for a change in the White House without really knowing what Trump will be and whether it will be the right president, but it cannot be worse. That's what we know exactly.
But you know, a commentator in the US after the debate said not just the Americans watched this, even Russia and China watched this debate. And this is what you refer to. Of course, they see this weakness. But you said that the Biden policy has been one of the worst for the Middle East. And of course, I agree. But isn't that a continuation of the previous Obama politics against Israel?
No, I don't think really. So I'm just publishing a book now in November. It's a novella. It's not a political book, but it is based on my diaries of the year 2009. That was the first year of Obama's presidency, and we had war here with the Hamas. And I must tell you that Obama acted much more competent than Biden did. So also what he said. I noted a lot of things. Obama gave our army free possibility to act. He didn't interfere. He didn't, what Biden did, try to interfere. Okay, he had just won the election and was a free man, so to speak, whereas Biden was all the time looking what the left of his party thinks and so on. He has disturbed a lot. I mean, he made a lot of problems also during these 9 months of war in the meantime, with strange manipulations of weapon deliveries and so on. I mean, there is a very strong Bezrat Hashem, so how do you say in English? God blessed, a very strong relationship and cooperation between the Israeli military and the American military, and the American research scientific research and weaponry and so on, that they are very deeply connected and working together. And this connection worked also during the war. So the Americans, these American parts were very helpful, and the American intelligence and the American high qualified weaponry and so on. But also here Biden tried to disturb and to interrupt it. I don't know what. So no, Obama did not. I cannot remember that he really interfered here. And on the contrary, he said some very remarkable things. He said in the first days of his office, he said, when my house would be attacked, where my daughters sleep at night, of course I would react like that. I would do everything to stop that. So that gave Israel green light. Biden did not. From the first moment on, Biden was weak, confused, of no clear opinion. One day he said that, another day he said another thing. And I mean, there are a lot of fun about him now, that people say when he starts a sentence, when he ends with a sentence, he doesn't know anymore where he has started. So it was like that. So you don't know whether it was bad intentions, whether he wanted to damage Israel, but it doesn't make any sense because the United States need Israel here in the region, or whether it was his incapacity, his bad state of mind, that he was not clear enough to react.
But I do remember that there was a tense relationship at the beginning between Netanyahu and Obama at the beginning of the presidency, and that was widely reported in U.S. media. But yes, definitely, it's difficult to be worse than Biden also, because who knows who Biden is? Because again, you should be a fool to believe that this man is really leading the free world. You should really be delusional, or the so-called free world, you know. If he's not able, as you say, and as we have clearly seen in the so-called debate, to start and end a sentence. But again, people are all surprised now. But I do remember that even before the campaign, when he was just nominated as a candidate before becoming president, there was an accident on CNN when during an interview, he thought he was talking like his dead son was still alive.
I remember that. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
But now it has been deleted, this video. This interview has been completely deleted. So it was already senile or non compos mentis even before becoming president. So the question is, who is leading? Who is deciding? Who is doing things? That's the big question that we don't have the right to know. That's so another dramatic.
I think there is a certain confusion in the United States, also in the among the so-called Dems, the Democratic wing. You see it in. I think that the New York Times was serious, recommending Biden should retreat and not become a candidate again. But he doesn't follow this advice. So I see that obviously the camp of the Democrats is split in this and many other questions. I think that the Democrats are in a state of confusion altogether. You see it with that left wing of the party that does a lot of harm, and there are on the other side there are a lot of very reasonable people in that party, so that's not to deny. And I think that there is a lot of infighting in within the Democratic Party now at the moment, and that's also not a good situation for us now here in the times of war. So we can only hope that the American military will work unimpressed by all that. Further cooperate with Israeli military, and here it is in the moment it's like that the military has much more authority in the population than the politicians. We are not happy about Netanyahu. Netanyahu made a lot of mistakes. And also Trump has already said that he is not in favor of Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu should not have done this last government. It was it was really problematic from the beginning on with that justice reform, and other was not the right thing in the right moment, at least, and the Israeli population in a kind of splitting here because of that. So it was all unnecessary. I think that we have a lot of problems here ourselves. And we hope, of course, that in the United States things will become more stable. There will be more stability and reliability in the next 4 years than it has been. And we have to do the same here. We also need a government that is really accepted by the population. That's not the case at the moment. Netanyahu made a lot of mistakes. So in a moment of war, to cling to that old-fashioned regulation for the ultra-Orthodox that they have not to go into the army. That was a severe mistake. He shouldn't have done that. So it cost him a lot of, and I can't defend him for that. I mean, that was a big mistake, and we were all happy that the Supreme Court was not clipped as it should have been by the justice reform, and could make a decision here that the High Court decided where the government was not capable to do so, that the ultra-Orthodox, of course, have to go to the army now in such a situation. And that's also what 60% of the young ultra-Orthodox people say themselves. They go to the how is it called in American, Misrat Gius, so the where the draft office on their own, and inscribe and enroll into the army if they can, if they are capable. Many are not, so that many of them are not fit enough for the army and have to do some like the non-religious people do. They prepare for the army, they are running and go to the gym. So that's also what they have to do. It will change their life entirely when they decide to go to the army. But Netanyahu didn't decide that. It was very, very bad. We had also here problems with the weak government. So that's what I want to say at this moment. And we only hope that that the government here and in the United States will become more stable and reliable in the future.
Well, it is a hope, but I don't know how can we base this hope. You know, there would be a great candidate in the United States, but unfortunately, it's not gonna. I mean, hope. What can I say? I mean, let's not forget that also Robert Kennedy Jr. is candidate for the presidency. You know, it's. I don't know if it's most likely it's going to be kind of a Perot effect again, but if you at least isn't, you know, first of all, I have to say it's a pleasure to be able to vote for a candidate, you know, but I know this is very unrealistic on my side, but it's a moral pleasure to be able to vote for a candidate for what the Kennedy have represented in the history of the United States and the world. And because also it's the only candidate that is talking frankly, that is really pointing to the real issues. Because I don't know, you're probably not aware in Israel that right this year, the US Army has missed its hiring target by 40,000 units. That's a lot. That's a lot of soldiers that did not show up. They did not enroll. and they
mm,
made a survey and analyzed from where these missing soldiers
mm,
are coming, and they're coming from certain states, from certain social areas that in the past thought it that it was their duty to defend their own country, and now for whatever reason they are not enrolling anymore. You know,
mm.
the US Army is not the army that people think, or it was, I don't know, 20 years ago. It is not. And that's another of the many problems. You have seen what happened in Afghanistan. I mean, again,
Mm,
not nobody talks about it because the media controls the brain of the modern citizen. That's why I
mm,
ask, where
mm,
should
mm,
this renaissance come from if people are so easily directed into one direction or another? I mean, Afghanistan is something unbelievable. It's worse military.
Also during the Biden administration, yeah,
Yes,
it was another catastrophic
yes,
misdeed here in the Middle East. Yeah, I can only tell you what we have experienced here in Israel, that in the moment of real danger, people change a lot. I didn't know that before. I had never experienced that before, also in my own family, that my grandchildren, without hesitating only 1 minute, went to the army on October 7th on their own, so they had to call them up. They went to their units, and in the moment, there is a real existential threat. And I mean, this doesn't feel the American population until now. They are far from it. They don't feel any existential threat for the United States. And it doesn't exist until now. I would say that the United States are a big, rich country that can defend itself and so on. No question. And far from the real dangerous zones. I mean, the United States are far from the Middle East and from China and Russia, except of Alaska. That's the only place where you are in direct connection with Russia. But all the other countries are far away. That could be dangerous. That's a complete different situation with us. So what I have seen is that in the moment of real danger, all these problems that have been until then, also the discussions within the population and all the hostilities and whatsoever, is put aside, and people react, I would say, naturally to defend their families, their children, their country. And that's what happened here. And that gave me a lot of hope that a man is so far, it's naturally working piece of the creation, created in a way that in such a moment man reacts positively, and this will also happen in the West. So in the moment, population of Western countries feel really in danger, feel their country in danger, and I think that's what we see in France and Germany and these countries, that they vote for other parties. I don't think whether these parties will be the solution and will do everything right. Probably not, but it's you feel the change. You feel that people are fed up with the bad politics of the last decade and want to change. And in the moment of real danger, I think also the American population would stand by its country. That's no question.
well, but you know, Chaim, a society, you can say this because in Israel there is still a sense of community, there is a sense of unity, but a society needs that to be able to protect itself. I just wanted to point out that 3 days ago has been the Independence Day in America, and some people, they were burning the U.S. flag in Washington Square, New York, and they even attacked a boy because he was wearing the American flag. This is not a sense of what a community is. There is this book that I have since long I wanted to present. It's a very important text by one of the most important American conservative thinker, Richard Weaver, that is now dead. The title is Ideas Have Consequences. Weaver tells the story of a man that during the Second World War, he was too old to enter the war. So he moved from the Midwest to San Francisco, where they were building the warship for the war. And he started working there at the ship, and his wife was working in a diner. So every 2 weeks, somebody was giving him a pink slip in his pocket, and he kept putting them in a box, because he didn't understood what they were. Until someone explained him that they were paycheck, that he was paid for building, for contributing to the military effort. And the man was shocked. The man said, "Why am I getting paid? Would you want to get paid to protect your mother if someone attacks her?" That sense of community that we were mentioned, it's a real fact, doesn't exist anymore in the West. I mean, probably exists still in Israel.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think that those fashions in society change. I've experienced that. You know that I come from Berlin. I was born in Berlin in the time of Cold War. I grew up with the Berlin Wall. We all thought it would stand forever. So the Berlin Wall collapsed within some days, and the mentality changed completely. I have witnessed that people can change, and they changed from being oppressed and slaves, living like slaves in the East. They changed to a complete different identity. So I have seen that also in other countries in the East. I was recently in Budapest in Hungary and see how this country has developed after the Russians were the Russian domination was over with the collapse of the Soviet Union. So I've witnessed that. I've seen that mentality of people can change overnight completely. And in the moment, and we have witnessed that here another time with that war. And I think in the moment, Western countries are really threatened by whomever. There is enough. In the meantime, there is a new block of anti-Western countries emerging. In this moment, where people in Western societies, there will be the old togetherness and inner solidarity that you miss now. I think this can recover very quickly.
Well, but the Roman Empire never went back to what it was after the 5th century.
Yeah, but the Roman, yes, but look, I have written a novel about the time of Nero.
I know. Yes.
And in this time already, many people were convinced that the Roman Empire was absolutely in decline and decadence and so on. But it took many centuries after that until it was really like that. So I think that even the West in decline has still some centuries, and we shouldn't be too pessimistic. Of course, there will be changes, and I don't know whether this kind of society we have now can survive and will be for all future. Of course not. Nothing on earth is without an end. So everything finds its end, and also Western society is today, but it will take a long time. I mean, still, it's the most creative and most productive and efficient kind of society we have in human history. I must say that we never had such a productive and creative society before, where so many people were involved in the. So we have a lot of things to defend, by the way. Our freedom that is without precedent. Never have people lived in such a freedom that they could talk whatever they thought, that we can criticize the government and air that, put it into the internet and all that. So all these things make the West also strong. It's not only that it contributes to confusion, of course, but it makes us strong. And you are right. The Roman Empire, in the end, was in decline, but it took many, many centuries.
Yeah, so you're saying it's just a matter of time. Depends. We should just understand where we are on this curve, on this
Yeah,
decadent
that's the
curve.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, we
yeah,
are still in an early stage, I would say. And there is many of the reserves the Western society are not really found out. So we have still a lot to, so let's say, in petto, as you say in Italian. A lot of things will emerge from Western society. It's still the society with the most inventions and technical progress and so on. And I'm quite sure we are still strong. But it's right that we discuss the signs of decline and decadence we have, and this president is clearly really symbolic figure for this confusion and decline in the United States at the moment.
exactly. It's a symbol of our age. That's all we can say about it. I mean, Biden is the perfect symbol of our time, just as the political class everywhere. We are unable to, we go back to the old Plato that our society, not strangely, calls an enemy of the open society. And Plato tells you a democracy without education leads to tyranny, leads to decadence, leads to self-destruction. And
Yeah.
he has been right for 2,500 years. So
Hmm.
but anyway, thank you so much, Kahim, for this stimulating conversation and the time you dedicated to us. And I enjoyed a lot, and I'm sure that also the viewers enjoyed this as well.
I also did. Yeah, I also did. It was very interesting as always with you. And let's do it again.
Yes, definitely. I wish you a great evening. Shalom.
Thank you. Shalom. Bye bye.